Well, I was just going to ask if it's obvious that the pay gem has been complex and that there are lots of challenges with it. If you could do it again, would you? And if so, what would you change, if anything?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we're in a pretty good spot now in general. What I ended up doing was we kind of take the same approach that Rails does, where when we have a pay customer and it says it's a Stripe or Braintree or Paddle type of customer, I actually now instantiate a Stripe customer class instance that knows how to talk to the API and it knows the record that we have in the database. So I just constantize the class name and then delegate to that. So now I have these implementations where they all have the same interface and they just know how to take the arguments and talk to the API. And that was one of the things that I learned, and this is now the way I would have done it from the beginning. And yeah, I think I don't know, extracting the database tables out was a big one. I don't know. I'm at the point where I'm pretty happy with it. I wish I had kind of done the separate tables, organized the sort of I don't know what, I don't have a great name for them yet, but they're sort of that the customers that are Stripe customers all have these features. And I just instantiate a class and it has all the functionality there. And the Rails model can actually just delegate stuff to that or vice versa. And, it knows how to talk to the API the same way that all the other ones do, with all their nuances together. And it separates them out nicely. And I have one of those for charges. So they all know how to do a refund. They all do it in a different way. Stripe issues a credit note for ones that deal with taxes, like if there was an invoice. So it does a refund, but also issues a credit note. So it takes care of, refunding the tax too, or whatever. And those are nice encapsulated things that they're like a service that knows the database stuff is here and knows the API is over here, and it knows how to just, deal with each of those actions. And it's been kind of nice to have that separated out for the different customer charge subscription. So at least at the moment, I'm pretty happy with all that stuff. We'll see in the future when things change, but honestly, the only other thing that I can think of that I would change is possibly just not trying to support them all and doing separate gems for each one and saying you can't build an app with Stripe and Braintree. That would be the other thing. The reason I did that though from the beginning was Go Rails started with Stripe, and over time people around the world are trying to sign up and they don't have a credit card because it's not a normal thing around the world. And people were like, I'd love to pay you, but I can't. And so I added PayPal, but PayPal's APIs are awful. So I ended up using Braintree just for PayPal alone, because Braintree's API appeared on the surface to be close to Stripe, but it's really not. And that was where I ended up, where I'm like, okay, well, I'll end up with two checkout processes. One will be Stripe, one will be Braintree. The checkout page will send you down one of these two paths. And it would be great if I could just open source the interface that would treat them the same. And you would just tell me ahead of time, is it Braintree or is it Stripe? But you could still call subscribe and give it a plan name. And that would be as far as your code would need to know, hopefully. And it worked out, but that's what led to all this complexity of now I've got to go build all this stuff that delegates to the correct class for Stripe, or this customer's Braintree. Now we got to go send them down the Braintree route. And that needs the same interface that Stripe does, but probably has some nuances and different arguments. And that's the stuff that's what do you do if Stripe has an argument, but Braintree doesn't? If you pass that in to your call, then Braintree is going to throw an error because it's I don't know what to do with this tax stuff that you said is true. And so, that's been the challenge of, you want to support all those one-off features as well, but is it worth trying to abstract that? Would you be better off just saying, this is the pay Stripe gem and the pay Braintree gem, and those have slightly different interfaces but are mostly the same? I would probably go that route these days, but it was great for Go Rails to have both implemented. So maybe you can still do separate controllers, and the forms can submit to two different places and slightly call different subscribe methods. But ideally, I didn't want that. I wanted one subscription controller, and you go create a subscription and it's all the same all the time.
Yeah.
And it's generally doable as long as you're not doing a feature that Stripe does that Braintree doesn't, So that's the challenge. But
I think
yeah.
or I mean, another way to split them but have a common core component is I'm thinking of like the OmniAuth gem, where it has a core thing that it does, but then you can add OmniAuth for Facebook or OmniAuth for other services.
Like a plugin system.
Yeah.
So maybe you would just have a core system that's called Pay or whatever, but then you have Pay Stripe. And then if someone pulled in Pay Stripe, it would know to pull the core components. And
Yeah.
I guess that's another way. But
yeah, I think that really works well if they have a standard interface, because then you can just mix and match stuff pretty easily. And the gems have really great, the OmniAuth gems have a great set of sort of settings. They can say like the URL for DigitalOcean is this and GitHub is that, and the token where current user information is at this route and whatever. And that's pretty awesome because it's a very generic interface that you can plug into and support OAuth 1, OAuth 2, yada, yada, yada. But again, it's kind of lucky that it's an OAuth standard. So for the most part, they're all following the same rules and don't really have different features. So I think that makes it easier for OmniAuth to sort of pull that off.
if you like this clip and want to watch another one, you can click right here. Or if you want to watch the full video, you can click here.